47 members of Congress just did something that has never happened in American history. They signed a bipartisan letter demanding the immediate resignation of a sitting president over a military memo that was leaked just 3 days ago. Not because of politics, not because of partisan games. Democratic Representative Kevin Chen stood in the Capitol rotunda yesterday and said it himself. This is about the Constitution itself being under attack. I'm Elizabeth Carter, and this is independent investigative journalism. Before we go any further, I need you to do something right now. Hit that subscribe button, click the notification bell, leave a comment below telling me if you've ever seen Congress members this unified across party lines. Share this video with everyone you know. This is the only official channel bringing you evidence-driven reporting without corporate filters. What I'm about to show you is happening in real time across Washington, D.C., and it's spreading to every military family in America. Here's the core argument tonight in plain language. A classified military memo leaked during a January 3rd security briefing has revealed unauthorized deployment orders that violate the War Powers Act, and for the first time in modern history, both Democrats and Republicans are saying the same thing. This isn't about politics. It's about the fundamental question of who controls the American military. I'm going to walk you through the specific memo contents, the congressional revolt it triggered, and the human cost that nobody is talking about so you can see exactly how we reached this constitutional breaking point. The memo itself contains direct orders to deploy 3,000 troops to undisclosed Middle Eastern positions without congressional authorization, dated January 2nd, just hours after the new year. Translation: someone in the executive branch decided to circumvent the Constitution while Congress was out of session, thinking they could present it as a done deal. Let me tell you about Sarah Martinez, retired Army colonel, 32 years of service, 3 tours in Afghanistan. She called my office yesterday morning after seeing the leaked memo contents on the news. Sarah told me, "Elizabeth, I've seen commanders make bad decisions under pressure, but I have never seen an administration bypass the chain of command this blatantly. My son is currently stationed at Fort Campbell. He could be in one of those unauthorized deployments right now, and I wouldn't even know it. Let that sink in." Sarah Martinez represents something that should terrify every American, regardless of political party. Career military officers are questioning the basic civilian control of the armed forces. When people who dedicated their lives to following orders start asking who's actually giving them, we have crossed a line that threatens the foundation of our democratic system. And this story is just beginning. What I haven't told you yet is what happened in that January 3rd classified briefing that made Republican senators walk out of their own party meeting. What I haven't told you yet is why the Pentagon spokesman refused to answer direct questions about the deployment timeline. What I haven't told you yet is how military families are already being affected by orders that may not even be legal. But wait, there's something they're not telling you. The leaked memo isn't just about unauthorized deployments. It contains intelligence assessments that contradict everything Congress was told about Middle Eastern threat levels just 2 weeks ago. And the source of that leak? Someone with access to the highest levels of military planning who felt they had no choice but to risk their career to warn the American people. Have you noticed that your representatives have been unusually quiet about military oversight votes lately? Drop a comment and let me know if you've tried to get answers from your Congress members about deployment authorization. Because what happened next is going to change how we think about congressional power forever. Let me show you exactly what was in that memo. The classified document, dated January 2nd at 11:47 p.m., contains 3 specific deployment orders that bypass every constitutional safeguard designed to prevent unauthorized military action. First order, immediate deployment of 1,200 Marines to undisclosed positions near the Iranian border. Second order, activation of 1,800 Army personnel for what the memo calls rapid response positioning in the Persian Gulf region. Third order, emergency authorization for Special Operations Command to begin what it terms preemptive intelligence gathering in 3 unnamed Middle Eastern capitals. Translation: someone in the executive branch just ordered military action that requires congressional approval without asking Congress first. And they did it while lawmakers were on holiday recess, hoping no one would notice until it was too late. The memo's language is deliberately vague, but 3 Pentagon sources confirmed to me yesterday that these orders violate the War Powers Resolution of 1973 in at least 4 specific ways. Dr. Rachel Stone, constitutional law professor at Georgetown University, told me, "Elizabeth, this isn't a gray area. The War Powers Act exists specifically to prevent exactly this scenario. When you deploy troops in potential combat situations without congressional notification, you're not just breaking a law, you're breaking the foundational principle of civilian control of the military. But here's where it gets worse. The memo also reveals intelligence assessments that directly contradict testimony given to Congress just 14 days earlier. On December 19th, Defense Secretary briefed the House Armed Services Committee that Iranian threat levels were at their lowest point in 18 months. The leaked memo, written just 2 weeks later, describes Iranian activities as requiring immediate military countermeasures. Pentagon spokesperson Colonel Jennifer Hayes held a press conference yesterday afternoon. She said, and I quote, "The Department of Defense maintains operational flexibility to respond to evolving security situations within established legal frameworks and continues to coordinate with congressional leadership on all significant deployments." Translation: we're going to keep doing whatever we want and tell Congress about it later, maybe. Let me tell you about the person who risked everything to leak this memo. I cannot reveal his real name for his safety, but I can tell you that Colonel James Thompson is a 20-year veteran of military intelligence who has served in Iraq, Afghanistan, and 3 classified assignments I cannot name. Thompson contacted a trusted congressional aide on January 3rd because, in his words, "I swore an oath to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. When I see orders that violate that Constitution being issued in secret, my oath doesn't give me a choice." Think about that for a moment. A career military officer with 2 decades of service felt he had to choose between following orders and protecting democracy. That choice should never exist in America. The timeline here is crucial. January the 2nd, unauthorized memo issued. January 3rd, memo leaked during classified congressional briefing. January 4th, first Republican senators began private meetings with Democratic leadership. January 5th, House GOP leadership tried to suppress discussion of the memo. January 6th, Senator Lisa Morrison from Texas, a reliable conservative, issued a statement saying she could no longer support party leadership that refuses to address constitutional violations. Here's the domino effect in plain language. First domino: memo reveals illegal deployment orders. Second domino: military whistleblower risks career to expose violations. Third domino: Congress members realize they're being bypassed entirely. Fourth domino: bipartisan revolt against executive overreach. And this is where Colonel Thompson's situation becomes dangerous. Military whistleblowers who expose classified information, even when that information reveals illegal activity, face court-martial proceedings that can result in decades in military prison. Thompson knows this. He told the congressional aide, "I have 3 kids and a mortgage, but I also have a constitution that I swore to defend. Some things are more important than personal safety." Military families across America are now asking the same questions Thompson asked. Maria Santos, whose husband serves with the 82nd Airborne, called my office this morning. "Elizabeth, my husband was supposed to come home next month after a 9-month deployment. Yesterday, his commanding officer told him his return date is indefinitely postponed due to evolving operational requirements. Is my husband part of one of these unauthorized deployments? How would I even know?" The most disturbing revelation in the memo isn't the unauthorized deployments themselves. It's the intelligence assessment section that describes Iranian military capabilities as significantly more advanced than what Congress was told in December. Either our intelligence agencies gave Congress false information 6 weeks ago, or someone is manufacturing a crisis to justify illegal military action. Senator Morrison's full statement yesterday should make every American pay attention. "I have served in Congress for 12 years and supported every reasonable military action to protect American interests. But when the executive branch issues deployment orders without congressional knowledge, let alone approval, we are no longer operating under the Constitution I swore to defend. This is not about politics. This is about the survival of democratic governance." And it gets worse. What I haven't told you yet is what happened when Pentagon officials were directly asked about the memo's intelligence assessments. What I haven't told you yet is how many other similar memos may exist. What I haven't told you yet is why 47 Congress members decided that party loyalty matters less than constitutional survival. Now let me walk you through the 72 hours that broke Congress. This is hour-by-hour documentation of how Democrats and Republicans went from political enemies to constitutional allies, and it started with a secret meeting that nobody was supposed to know about. January 4th, 2:15 p.m. Senator Lisa Morrison, Texas Republican, 20-year conservative voting record, walked into Minority Leader Chuck Schumer's office for a meeting that lasted exactly 18 minutes. No staff, no notes, no official record. Morrison walked out of that meeting and immediately called an emergency meeting with 12 other Republican senators. What was said in Schumer's office? According to a source present, Morrison said exactly this. Chuck, I need to know if you're serious about constitutional oversight or if this is just another political game, because what I'm about to tell you changes everything. What Morrison told Schumer was this. She had been receiving calls from military families in her state whose service members were being deployed without proper congressional notification, not just the families from the leaked memo. Families whose soldiers had been moved 3 times since December under what the Pentagon calls operational adjustments. Morrison realized she had been defending deployment decisions she never knew were being made. January 4th, 6:30 p.m., Democratic Representative Kevin Chen from California, member of the House Armed Services Committee for 8 years, stood on the House floor for what he thought would be routine parliamentary business. Instead, Chen delivered what congressional historians are already calling the most important floor speech about military oversight since the Pentagon Papers. Chen said, "Mr. Speaker, I have read classified intelligence assessments that fundamentally contradict the public statements made by defense officials to this very chamber. I have seen deployment orders that bypass constitutional requirements for congressional authorization. I have spoken with service members who have been ordered to prepare for combat operations that Congress has never approved. This is not partisan politics. This is a constitutional crisis." Think about that. A Democratic congressman publicly stated that the executive branch was lying to Congress about military intelligence and deployment authorization. In any other political era, Republicans would have immediately defended executive authority. Instead, 12 GOP senators met privately that night to discuss Chen's statement. Here's what those text messages between House GOP leadership looked like, and these were leaked to my source yesterday. House Minority Leader to Armed Services Ranking Member, January 4th, 11:47 p.m. We have a problem. Chen isn't grandstanding. The intelligence briefing we got last week doesn't match what defense told us in December. Something is seriously wrong here. Armed Services Ranking Member responding at 11:52 p.m. I know. 3 of our members on the committee are asking the same questions. We can't defend what we don't understand. January 5th brought the security briefing that changed everything. At 9:20 a.m., congressional leadership from both parties received a classified intelligence update on Middle Eastern threat assessments. What they learned in that briefing made the leaked memo look like a minor procedural violation instead of the constitutional crisis it actually represented. The Iran intelligence was worse than anything Congress had been told. Not worse as in more dangerous, worse as in completely contradictory to every briefing they had received for 6 months. Iranian military capabilities had been systematically underreported to Congress, while deployment decisions were being made based on the real intelligence that Congress never saw. Senator Morrison walked out of that briefing and called a press conference for 2:00 p.m. that afternoon. Morrison said, "I have served on the Armed Services Committee for 8 years. I have supported every military action that followed constitutional procedures and congressional authorization. Today, I learned that Congress has been systematically excluded from deployment decisions that put American service members in harm's way, based on intelligence assessments we were never allowed to see. I can no longer support an administration that treats Congress as a procedural obstacle rather than a constitutional requirement." Translation: a Texas Republican just admitted that her own party's administration had been lying to Congress about military operations for months, and she was choosing the Constitution over party loyalty. But here's where this gets personal for military families. Let me tell you about Jennifer Walsh. Jennifer's husband, Staff Sergeant Michael Walsh, has been deployed 4 times since 2019. Jennifer lives in Morrison's district in Texas, and she called Morrison's office on January 5th after watching the press conference. Jennifer told Morrison's chief of staff, "Senator Morrison is right to ask these questions. My husband was supposed to come home in December. Then his deployment got extended to February. Last week, they told him it might be extended to April. Nobody will tell me why, and nobody will tell me where he's actually stationed right now. I get letters postmarked from 3 different countries, but the Pentagon says he's at 1 location. Something is wrong." Jennifer Walsh represents thousands of military spouses who are watching their families destroyed by deployment decisions that may not even be legal. When congressional oversight breaks down, real families pay the price. January 6, 10:30 a.m., the moment when everything changed. 47 members of Congress, 26 Democrats and 21 Republicans signed a formal letter demanding immediate resignation over constitutional violations. Not impeachment proceedings, not investigations, immediate resignation. The letter contained one sentence that should terrify anyone who understands constitutional government. We, the undersigned members of Congress, can no longer fulfill our constitutional duties of military oversight because we are systematically excluded from deployment decisions that affect American service members and national security. That sentence means Congress is admitting they have lost control of the military. In a democracy, when elected representatives can no longer oversee the armed forces, you no longer have a democracy. The 47th signature belonged to Representative Michael Torres from Arizona, a moderate Republican who had never criticized executive authority in 15 years of service. Torres told reporters, "I didn't sign this letter because I oppose the president. I signed it because I oppose the complete breakdown of constitutional government. When Congress cannot perform its oversight functions, we are no longer operating under the system the founders created, and that's how we got here. 72 hours from a leaked memo to a bipartisan constitutional revolt, from individual concerns to collective action, from political disagreement to democratic survival. But what I haven't told you yet is how military families are responding to this congressional breakdown. What I haven't told you yet is the human cost when constitutional safeguards fail. What I haven't told you yet is why this matters to every American family, not just military families. Let me tell you what constitutional crisis actually means when you strip away the political jargon. It means Jennifer Walsh hasn't slept through the night in 6 days. It means Maria Santos lost her government security clearance for asking the wrong questions. It means Robert Kim, a decorated Afghanistan veteran, is having panic attacks every time he sees military news because the institutional trust that kept him stable is collapsing. These are real people, real families, real consequences of what happens when the safeguards designed to protect democracy break down completely. Jennifer Walsh lives in a 2-bedroom apartment in Killeen, Texas, 20 minutes from Fort Hood, where her husband, Staff Sergeant Michael Walsh, was last officially stationed. I spoke with Jennifer yesterday morning, and she told me something that should make every American angry regardless of political party. Jennifer said, "Elizabeth, I've been a military wife for 12 years. I know deployments get extended. I know operations change, but I have never had my husband's commanding officer refuse to tell me what country he's deployed to. When I called the base family readiness group, they told me they're not authorized to discuss operational locations. That's not operational security, that's institutional secrecy." Jennifer's situation isn't unique. She represents approximately 15,000 military spouses who have received deployment extension notices since December without explanation of mission changes or duration estimates. When Congress can't oversee military operations, military families lose the transparency they need to plan their lives. Jennifer told me, "My daughter keeps asking when Daddy is coming home, and I can't answer because nobody will tell me where he is or what he's doing. Last week, she asked me if Daddy is safe, and I realized I don't actually know. How do you explain to a 7-year-old that the government her father serves won't tell his family where he is?" Let that sink in. Maria Santos worked as a defense contractor for 8 years, managing logistics coordination between Pentagon procurement and private suppliers. Maria held a secret-level security clearance and had never had a security violation or administrative problem. On January 4th, Maria attended a routine contractor briefing where defense officials discussed the leaked memo situation. Maria asked a single question during the Q&A session. If deployment orders bypass congressional authorization, how do contractors maintain legal compliance with congressional procurement oversight requirements? 3 days later, Maria received notice that her security clearance was under administrative review for asking questions outside the scope of her authorized access. Maria told me, "Elizabeth, I asked about legal compliance, not classified operations. I wanted to know if my work was legally authorized. Apparently, asking whether Congress knows about the projects I'm working on is now a security threat." Translation: defense contractors who question whether their work follows constitutional procedures get punished for asking about legal compliance. When institutional oversight breaks down, even asking the right questions becomes dangerous. Maria Santos has 3 children and a mortgage. She lost her job on Friday because contractors can't work on classified projects without active security clearances. Maria said, "I've been supporting military operations for 8 years because I believe in defending democracy. Now I'm unemployed for asking whether our operations follow democratic procedures." The irony would be funny if it wasn't destroying my family's financial security. Robert Kim served 3 tours in Afghanistan and received a Purple Heart after an IED explosion in Helmand Province in 2018. Robert struggled with PTSD after returning home but found stability through his trust in military leadership and institutional accountability. Robert told me, "Elizabeth, what kept me functional after coming home was knowing that the chaos I experienced in Afghanistan was controlled by people who followed rules and answered to Congress. When I see news about unauthorized deployments and congressional breakdowns, it feels like the institutional foundation I built my recovery on is collapsing." Robert's PTSD symptoms have intensified during the current crisis because military veterans depend on institutional stability for psychological security. When the chain of command becomes questionable, veterans who served in that chain of command question the meaning of their service. Robert said, "I was wounded following orders from people I trusted to make legal decisions. If those people are now making illegal decisions, what does that say about the orders I followed? What does that say about the friends I lost?" PTSD recovery requires trusting that your sacrifice had meaning. When institutions break down, that trust breaks down too. David Park works as a congressional aide for Representative Chen, the Democrat who gave the floor speech about military oversight. David has worked in Congress for 6 years and has never experienced anything like the last week. David told me, "Elizabeth, I've seen political fights and partisan battles, but I've never seen Congress members this scared. Not scared of political consequences, scared of institutional collapse." When Senator Morrison called our office to coordinate with Democratic leadership, she said something I'll never forget. She said, "David, this isn't about politics anymore. This is about whether Congress still exists as a functional branch of government." David hasn't slept more than 3 hours a night since the crisis began because congressional staff are working around the clock trying to restore basic oversight functions that should never have been compromised. David said, "We're not just responding to a crisis. We're trying to rebuild constitutional safeguards while the crisis is still happening. It's like trying to repair the foundation of a house while you're still living in it during an earthquake." Translation: congressional staff are discovering that basic oversight mechanisms they assumed existed have been systematically undermined, and they're trying to rebuild democratic institutions in real time. These 4 stories represent millions of Americans whose lives are directly affected when constitutional safeguards fail. Military families lose transparency and security. Defense contractors lose jobs for asking legal questions. Veterans lose institutional trust necessary for psychological stability. Congressional staff lose sleep trying to restore democracy while it's under attack. This isn't abstract political theory. This is the human cost of constitutional breakdown, and it's happening right now to real families across America. But what I haven't told you yet is how this institutional collapse happened over months and years, not days. What I haven't told you yet is the pattern of oversight failures that created the conditions for this crisis. What I haven't told you yet is who saw this coming and tried to warn us. Here's the systemic breakdown that nobody wants to talk about. This crisis didn't start with a leaked memo in January 2026.